coming to you from a basement studio somewhere down under. It's the 80s Show with Australia's Retro Man. On tonight's show, Retro Man does a retrospective on singer Rick Astley and takes a look at his greatest hits album. Well, what are we waiting for? Lights, camera, Retro Man!
G'day viewers, Retro Man here and welcome to the 80s Show. Now today we have a pop star spotlight. That's right, I'll be talking about a classic musician from the 1980s. And the guy that I'll be talking about today began his life in Lancashire in England. He was the guy that had a very interesting hairstyle. He dressed a certain way, and he also had a number of hit songs in 1987. It's none other than Rick Astley. That's right, you know the name, you know the songs. He's the guy that gave us Never Going to Give You Up. That's the name of the song. Yeah, of course you know that song. Everybody does. It was actually trending a number of years ago. It was part of this Rickroll thing online where people got carried away and clicked onto it, and then Rick Astley's Never Going to Give You Up came on the screen, and everyone, before they knew it, were listening to Rick Astley again. But anyway, Rick Astley began his singing career in the mid-80s. He was a young guy that decided to get involved in these cover bands, and one of them was called FBI. And the songs he was performing were things like, renditions of Beatles songs and songs by The Shadows. They were Cliff Richard's backing band. So there was a mix of songs that they were doing in England there. And then he was spotted one day by the producers Stock, Aitken and Waterman. And all of a sudden, Rick was sort of ushered into the studio there, where he performed this song called Never Going to Give You Up. And it became a mega hit in a short period of time. I think Rick was only about 19 years of age. Never gonna give you up, never gonna let you down. It's quite an amazing story, really, because he recorded the song and didn't think much more about it. It just sort of, it was something that he did, and he didn't really dwell on it or think much about it. He got on with his daily activities. And the next minute, it's on the air. He'd shot a music video for it, and there was all this buzz and straight to number one. So it was quite a meteoric rise for young Rick Astley. And what I have here is his greatest hits album. I wanted to sort of give you some insight into his music, and this album came out in 2002, this greatest hits album, and it has a bit of a dull cover. I mean, I think they could have done a little bit better with the artwork, but it has 16 tracks here, and they're all great tracks. And after he did Never Gonna Give You Up, which is actually track one on the greatest hits album, he was quickly ushered back into the studio to record Whenever You Need Somebody, which was again another smash hit. And that song had a very interesting music video. There was a girl in there that he was interacting with in that clip, and it was quite the clip. I think young guys at the time found it very memorable, seeing Rick interact with this young lady, and it certainly was a watchable clip. And then he did some other songs. I mean, on here we've got When I Fall in Love, My Arms Keep Missing You, Together Forever. Do you remember that one? That was probably maybe the third hit from that album, and that was a great track as well. I think that went to number one in the United States, Together Forever. And the funny thing is about Rick Astley is people knew his music, but sometimes didn't know what he looked like. And one thing I can recall is his song was playing somewhere once, and I was with a group of people, and they were like, "Who sings that?" And I'm like, "Well, Rick Astley." And they're like, "Is he black?" They thought it was actually a black artist. So Rick Astley has this baritone voice, and it's a very distinguished voice, and it's quite an interesting voice in that it's captivating. You can imagine a lot of things as to who Rick Astley could possibly be. That's the power of a great voice. And it's quite interesting to think that they felt, just by listening to him, that he had that sound of a black artist. And I found that rather remarkable. But Rick Astley, let's have a look at some of the other songs. She Wants to Dance With Me was a bit of a hit. Take Me to Your Heart, Hold Me in Your Arms. Cry for Help was a song that he had in the early 90s. So yeah, Rick Astley had an interesting career. After about 5 or so years at the top, all of a sudden he decided to just retire virtually. I mean, he was riding a wave and he decided, no, I'm not going to board this plane. I'm not going to go and perform today. I just feel like going back to my fiancée and my baby girl and taking some time out. And that's what he did in the early 90s. And Rick really didn't resurface until the 2000s when, of course, this Greatest Hits album came out. And then he also became part of that Rickroll phenomenon online, where that brought him to the fore again in the public eye. So he's had a very interesting career, many years in the wilderness, but Rick Astley in recent times is back. He's doing all sorts of shows. He will pop up, they're doing an 80s night somewhere where there's a lot of 80s artists coming together for a concert, and Rick will certainly be on that bill, singing his hits, Never Gonna Give You Up, and Whenever You Need Somebody, Together Forever. He sings those slew of hits he had in the 80s. And he's a very interesting guy, very quietly spoken. He doesn't give you too much details on his private life, and really that's a good way to be. He just lets it flow in his music. And he was part of the Stock Aitken and Waterman producing group, which I said, and they were responsible for artists like Kylie Minogue and so forth in the 80s, so they had quite the run, and Rick Astley was one of their top flight artists. So there we have it, guys. I mean, there's more great songs on here. He actually got into a bit of soul music in the early 90s, and they sort of round out this album. So you've got the hits at the start from the 80s, and you've got these type of soul songs injected into the mix towards the end. So that's Rick Astley's greatest hits. And hey, do you remember when you first heard Rick Astley on the radio, or did you see him on TV? I actually saw the music video on a TV show called Video Hits in 1987, and that was when I first saw him, and I thought, who's this guy? He's like a little bit of a breath of fresh air. He was something different on the scene. He certainly had an interesting hairdo and the clothes that he was wearing and so forth. And there was a friend of mine that I had that actually modelled himself on Rick Astley. In no time it was like I'd look over and this guy was like a Rick Astley clone. He actually liked his music so much that he seemed to want to just, live the Rick Astley life for a while there, this fella I knew. But I can actually recall going to a wedding in the late 80s, and I thought to myself, I was talking to a couple of girls there and talking about music, and they were like, so who do you like to listen to? And of course there was Michael Jackson, there was Prince, there was Springsteen, and there was Bon Jovi. And all of a sudden we spoke about Rick Astley. So I went over there to the DJ at the wedding and I said, hey, can you play me Rick Astley's latest song? He said, who? And I said, Rick Astley. Rick who? And he didn't even know, and I looked over at my cousin and I said, well, this guy obviously doesn't watch Video Hits. But at the time, it was amazing that he didn't know who I was talking about, because Rick had the #1 hit in Australia, and actually it was #1 hit in a lot of places around the world, Never Gonna Give You Up. And that's a funny little story about a DJ at a wedding that just didn't know who Rick Astley was. But he was certainly the guy on the scene in the late 80s. I remember many of his songs, I'm sure you do too. So in the comments below, pop in there your favourite Rick Astley songs. Tell us your Rick Astley memories. And that's it for today, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. This is Retro Man, bringing you another pop culture kick, if you will, of musicians from the 1980s. Rick Astley was certainly a memorable one. So that's it. This is Retro Man, living the dream, 80s style. Stay gold.
Thanks for watching. Retro Man will return faster than a boomerang and with a voice as smooth as Rick Astley. Please subscribe, and good night, viewers.